to another episode of the Keep Making podcast. Today on the podcast, we've got Kerry Grant. Hi, Kerry. How you doing today?
Hello, hello. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm super good. I'm so glad and excited that you're part of this podcast. So, Kerry, you're an artist, and I don't know how recent, but I know recently you've gotten into resin when it comes to combining that medium in with your art. I'd love to start how you first discovered about resin or epoxy or that stuff in general, and then how long you've been in the art space, or how long have you called yourself an artist?
Okay. I got into resin because I was trying to find a coating for a project that I was working on. When I very first started with art, recreating texture, specifically wood and marble and concrete, I had a fascination with it. I still do. Mm-hmm. And I was working on a specific project. I'll never forget. I was living in Alabama at the time, and I wanted something that was super glossy, but I didn't want to use like a polyurethane coat. And I thank God for the internet. I stumbled onto resin, and I tried it for the first time, and I literally sold that piece from maybe 5 years ago last week. Like I held onto it for that long. But there was the very first time I used it. I just coated this wood panel piece in resin, and it turned out beautiful. And from then on, I was hooked.
That is so cool. I didn't even know that. So your very first piece that you ever coated with epoxy got sold?
Yeah, literally last week, which is a little bit of a full circle moment, because the work that I'm doing now with resin looks a complete 180 from what I was doing back then with resin. Mm-hmm. But it's almost just a testament to how versatile that medium is. You can do so much with it, which is one of the reasons why I love it so much.
That's so cool. That's so cool. So it sounded like you got your entry point with Google. And then did you have anybody that, like a friend or a cousin, anyone that was like, hey, you should really try this? Or was it literally just like, hey, I just need super glossy something online, and that was the journey?
It was a Google search followed by a few YouTube videos, and then a trip to Hobby Lobby. I mean, there definitely was a mapped out plan there, but I ended up finding Alumilite via just craft stores locally in town, Hobby Lobby, and a few other places. And I've been using you guys' product ever since. Like it works so great.
Well, hey, we like the sound of that. The reality is, I don't think many people know that, especially when it comes to the digital side of Alumilite. I think we're trying to bring those worlds together, because the reality is we're like in Michael's, Hobby Lobby, mom and pop craft stores, Joann's. Like we're all over when it comes to distribution, at least with our amazing line, which is like our epoxy, our new ACC Plus, and the deep pour. They're all going to be in those stores too. So that's pretty cool that's how you got your entry point, because it wasn't necessarily like, you found us on Instagram, or you found us on a podcast like this, or via YouTube or whatever.
Certainly. There wasn't an ad, but the product was front and center on the shelf. So it was the first one I picked up.
We like that. So I'd love for you to tell me about your artwork and what kind of inspires you. Because like, I'd say you're in the lines of like fine art, but you also dabble with like mixed media when it comes to different, like creating different lines and textures for your canvases. We love your work. I mean, we scroll endlessly on Instagram, and that's what stood out to us, is like, what is this? He's clearly coated this with epoxy, and then we just dove in, and we're like, we really love what you make. So maybe talk about your journey of becoming a fine artist. I don't know if you would call yourself that, but that's kind of how I view your work.
I'll take it today. That'll be the title of the day, the fine artist. Well, I'll give you a little bit of background. I'll speed you up to my resin work. I went to college for graphic design like over a decade ago, and some of the basic courses were 2-dimensional design and 3-dimensional design, drawing 101 and stuff. So that was probably where just like my foundation started. Really, before college, I was creative, but I did nothing in the realms of like making art with my hands. Once I kind of got started in that, it just never stopped. Of course, like those courses came and went, but at night after work, when I was by myself, I was creating more and more and more, and I dug deeper. Fast forward to, I'd say, maybe 4 or 5 years ago when I started using, really using resin. And now I use it primarily to, I told you I was obsessed with texture, to
Hmm.
recreate marble and natural stone and granite. And those geodes are so popular right now. I think there's, I'm striking kind of while the iron's hot, but people love it. And
Hmm.
if why not marry the two, the trend with what I can do. And like I said, resin's so versatile, you really can make it look however you want to. Sometimes the pieces look like actual stone. Sometimes they look like a galaxy. Sometimes it looks like the ocean floor. You could get so many options.
You are not wrong, and the your work definitely speaks to that when it comes to the versatility with which you've been creating stuff. Uh, if you guys are interested in following Kerry, we will definitely put all his handles in the descriptions and stuff like that. But if it's at Kerry Grant or at Kerry Grant Gallery, are the ones that you're definitely going to want to check out because his work is really cool. And I, you're selling your work now. Where do you primarily sell your work?
So I am currently constructing a website, so it's really easy to get in contact with me. But the majority of my work, I'm selling it on Instagram. I'm doing a lot of my posting on my virtual gallery on Instagram, and because the internet's so beautiful, you can reach out to people you've never met via a DM. And so I get orders from people all across the country that just say, "Hey, I'm checking out your work. I just have questions on pricing or your process, or what does it take to get one of these in my home." That's been my primary source of sales right now. However, the goal is to have it streamlined within the next few weeks so that if someone wants to purchase a painting, they can either reach out to me or they can just click a few buttons on the website and have one sent to their home. So all that's coming soon. But right now, if you want a piece, just reach out to me via Instagram.
Cool. Well, that's good. That's my. I want to make sure that you get plugged as much as possible throughout this thing, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that you're successful in this. Speaking of success, how it sounds like you create custom pieces, but what are the pieces that you've gravitated to, like of your own work more than others? Like I really love the ones that where you have your, I don't know if it's string, I don't know what it is, but you have like very clear lines with different textures, but they're very modern. But at the same time, they remind me of like the 80s. So like
Yeah,
I'm yeah, that's where my brain goes when I see those art pieces. So uh, what's for you your favorite work that you're creating for yourself?
honestly, it's really anything that can capture something that's super linear or geometric, but also have a little flair. Even like the wall behind me is just an excessive use of painter's tape, really is all it is. Um,
That's great.
However, um, I hung a piece on the wall that has some hints of marble and brass, and I don't know. I think those pieces speak to me so much because they are a physical representation of of how I feel. A lot of times, I love the structure and rigidity of life, but there are so many parts that are chaotic and spontaneous, and I feel like I check that box too. So I love that in this sense I get a chance to marry those two aesthetics. And I say all the time, if someone has a piece of my artwork in their home or in their office or in their workspace, they have a piece of my soul with them. They don't even know. But really and truly, a lot of my art reflects my character and my desires, and not just what I'm feeling in the moment, but I think just kind of who I am in a meta sense. You have that hanging on your wall if you have one of my pieces.
Man, I don't think you could have given me a better like trailer that I can clip out and share on Instagram or share on Facebook for people to come check out this podcast. That moment
Um,
right there, like I'm like, hey team, whoever's editing this one, that's the trailer for this podcast right there.
Really nice inspirational music. I wish I could play the piano. I could give you a little tune in the background.
I'm not. The funny part is, like, I'm not joking at all. I'm absolutely going to use that. That was great. No, I mean, I think that's what people want when they are inspired by art. They want a piece of whatever that creative, or sorry, that creation process, not the creative process, but a little bit of both. But like that like act of making. I think every human wants to be able to do that and is capable of doing that. But then there's people that pursue it and do it, and then there's people that kind of like, oh, you know what, a bit more passive. Maybe I'll appreciate it by participating by purchasing it or supporting it on some level, which I think both are important.
Well, and I think that's at the end of the day, one of the goals that I have. Like you've mentioned fine art a few times just while we've been talking, and I want to be able to bring fine art. It's difficult for me to call it fine art because I'm doing it here in my home. And in my head, if I can do it, anybody can. But the reality is that's not always the case. And people do appreciate fine art that is from an artist that they know. And even if they don't know me, an artist that they can connect with, an artist that they can, I don't relate to, that's so important. I mean, art has spoken to people for eons, but we're getting into a space where art doesn't have to be Sistine Chapel worthy. If you scroll past it on Instagram and you like it, you have access to that. And that's one of the things that I want to do with my gallery. I want to give people access to my art, or if it's not my art, the art that I like, that I promote and suggest, like all the above.
Right. I'm trying. There's no like response outside of like, cool. Like I'm here for I'm here for that. That's really awesome. So, the work that you do, you clearly love the geometric shapes. I like what you said about how you're feeling in that time. We discovered you obviously in 2020. 2020 has been a crazy year. There's been a lot going on in the world. It seems though that you have found a lot of joy in these acts of creation. And I'm wondering if you can elaborate on that. We don't have to get into all of the clearly crazy stuff that's gone on in 2020, but like, I really love your joy in the act of making. And I'm hoping that you can talk about that despite what's going on in the world, which is clearly sucky in a lot of ways for a lot of people. So, yeah.
You know, I think the first word that comes to mind is that it's just cathartic in a way. And everyone has their little cathartic releases, but I liken it to like people that are really good with their plants or gardening, not even like outside plants, but I mean the inside plants that they have to do like the trimming and the pruning and the making sure it's getting the appropriate amount of light and water, not too much, not too little. I think about how it allows you to step outside of your existence and your stresses for that moment and to focus on something else. And specifically with plants, it breathes, there's almost an immediate return on your investment and your time there. Well, with art, it's the exact same way. That creation process allows me just to step out of the stresses of being who I am and what I'm feeling, because I mean, everyone has that weight, and it really just allows me to dive into an entire new world and kind of make up the rules as I go. One thing that we're all taught is that everything has to have like a process and a right and wrong way. But there's so many times that like the process is learned and developed because I did it the wrong way. So there's the act of creating really is that's the part that gives me the release. 2020 has been so crazy, but I think because I created so much in 2020, I learned so much. 3 weeks ago, I quit my job, my full-time big boy job. And
Really?
I'm painting full-time now with all. Yeah, I was working as a footwear buyer for a national retail company. I was with that company for almost 11 years. And I think coronavirus and Black Lives Matters and everything that happened this year really put a lot of things into perspective for me. And I realized that in order for me to really get ahead and make a mark, I have to own something. And I'm sitting on what I hope is a gold mine. I hope that my art can take me to the next level. But even if not, even if I'm doing this process the wrong way, I'm totally gonna learn. So I'm here, I'm along for the ride. I'm creating as I'm going, and I'm one of the few people that get a chance to do what they love for a living.
Dude, I don't even know what to say outside of that's. One, so inspiring. Two, kudos to you. Like, three, 11 years then taking the process, like you're putting it all on your own shoulders. Like, hey, you know what? It's better now than ever in order to actually pursue what you want to make for your own life. It's so cool. It's so awesome. I don't know if I'm feeling inspired. I'm like on my vacation right now. And I'm like, I need to get back to work. Like, this dude is, I gotta go. Like, he's inspiring me too much. Like, I gotta get back into the grind right now.
You deserve it.
But it's really cool. Really, it's really awesome.
Well, I appreciate it. I've learned so much just with my career in the corporate world in life, and I at the end of it all, coronavirus scared the crap out of so many of us. So many of us had no clue what was going to happen from February of this year to now, and there was a lot of signs that maybe I should hold on to my job for a little bit longer. Maybe I should wait it out. But one of my friends said to me, "Kerry, your business has been growing in spite of coronavirus. So why wouldn't you, what are you sitting on? What are you waiting on?" And I kind of assessed the pros and the cons, and I really, and the job I did.
So you briefly cut out there because of probably my terrible home internet, but like at the very end, you were saying like you actually jumped. You're like, hey, you actually, I need to go actually full steam into this, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
And from then on, it's been about 3 weeks, so I don't want to speak too prematurely. However, what a great 3 weeks it's been. I've already got chance to travel a little bit. I have a waiting list of people of clients that I'm working to get art to, and it's a dream. I'm not really sure the exact next steps, but I'm getting a chance just to live it and work it and go wherever the journey takes me.
Kerry, the thing is, like, I feel like I could actually talk to you for like 2 hours now because of just the spot that you're in is so dialed in. It's very clear that you have a voice. It's very clear that you know what you want to do, and it's very clear that this matters. So, yeah, I guess my next question is, how could we continue to support you as people, but also as a brand?
You know, keep liking, keep reposting, keep sharing. You guys keep making amazing products. I'll keep using them. I really any bit of like success or connection that I've had so far has really been grassroots. It's been connecting via art, but also connecting like via the soul, like one-on-one talks with people. So I want to continue support in this way. If anyone's listening to this podcast and wants to check out my art, I'd love that too. If you want to buy a piece, if you just want to reshare or like a post, I'll take all of it. I will, because at the end of the day, I want to speak to your heart. I want my art to speak to your soul. And if we do either one of those, like, I'm winning.
I'm gonna get emotional if we keep talking like this. Like I'm gonna, I'm like too relaxed right now. You're catching me in this like super vulnerable spot, so I'm just gonna like start crying on this podcast, man. Like I'm like, like the best. If you know me, like you know this is actually true. Like my friends are gonna like know this. Like it's coming. And I'm like, man, this is the first time that you and I have had like any kind of serious conversation outside of like, hey, you want to try some new product that we're launching? Like that's like our last conversation was that.
Well, listen, I appreciate that my story is touching your soul. Trust me.
It is. It really is. So with that in mind, we absolutely are going to continue to share your work. We'll definitely, we're obviously going to feature you as Maker Monday. So I'm really excited to have this podcast out there, but then to share your story on our Instagram and all the other social channels. But also, like, people can support you. We have an affiliate link. If you're like interested in getting into epoxy, like, use Kerry's code. Like, it will support him that way. So you can go both ways. Like, if you're like always purchasing epoxy, you can purchase using his code for the first time, which will give him some money. So yeah, there's another way we could get that out there a little bit. I do have another question for you. And I will, and I'm going to go back to a little bit more lighthearted thing, but like when it comes to your favorite piece of art that you've created, it can be anything. It doesn't necessarily have to just be a canvas. And then one that you wish that the world knew nothing about, but I'm hoping that you're willing to share with me right now.
Okay, I'll tell you. Why would you ask me this? on my current Instagram page that it's one of those retro geometrical pieces. It's very 70s, 80s color scheme to me, but think like burnt orange, turquoise, mustard kind of colors. I love that piece. That piece was, there was so much thought put into it. Long story short, it was sold. I was doing one final coat of resin on it, and you know how if resin is sitting in too much volume for too long, it kind of hardens faster. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know at the time, and so long
Oh.
story short, I'm pouring the final finish on this beautiful piece, and there's like a large clump of pre-hardened resin inside. There's no way
Oh.
that you can kind of go around it or fix it. I cried. I was so upset. I was not just upset that my hard work was kind of just ruined, but also the client was so excited about it. He was purchasing it for his fiance who had been out of town, and he was going
Oh.
to come back and surprise him with this piece. I was so upset. Granted, I learned a very valuable lesson. That instance caused me to do a lot more digging to figure out what exactly happened there. However, in the moment, who cares about the lesson? I wanted the piece to turn out great. So I have a lot of those instances where these carefully crafted pieces that are almost like my children just evaporate almost in front of my eyes, and it hurts my heart. However, every single time I leave with a valuable lesson, and I kind of think to myself, because I'm doing this in a very self-taught manner, that well, sometimes that's the only way to really learn, is to kind of mess up something that seems important.
It's very true. It's very true. Only through that failure process, and then also like you experience the exotherm. So when those two chemicals come together, that heat, and especially if they're thicker, more than like the quarter inch or whatever we say for like the regular ACC, whoo, it can crack. Yeah, it can do a lot of different stuff when it's too thick.
And that it did.
So sorry. Okay, so that's a negative. What was a positive?
Um, I don't, as far as positives, there are so many positive pieces that I feel like
What's your favorite in the last month? Let's do that, because that's probably, it'll narrow it in somewhat.
favorite in the last month it's, I'll say, any run-of-the-mill resin pour. I've gotten the chance. I'm working on a lot of different sizes. I actually have one right here that I want to show you. I have these little mini pours that I'm doing.
Oh, cool.
And I'm even doing some that are smaller than this. But this is so fun because it gets a chance to take a lot of like the larger work that I do, and it streamlines it, and people can give these away as gifts. They can put it in their office. They can put it on a shelf. I even have some that are stackable so that you can even put them like amongst like your stacks of books on your coffee tables and stuff like that. That's been giving me just a lot of joy. I'm finding like practical ways that I feel like people really will be able to respond to it and say, yeah, I want that. So as of late, if you ask me in another 30 days, I might have a different answer to your question. Definitely,
Well,
my mini pours is what I'm calling them. It's been great.
I like that. The mini pours. I do like those mini canvases, and I do like your thinking when it comes to something that could live on a coffee table, like a coffee table book. I'm a huge fan of those kinds of that style, and something that you want to just like grab and like look at and be like, what is this? That's an interesting idea. I've not heard that before when it comes to a resin pour art piece. That's a great idea.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so I do this on every podcast, and I want to give you the opportunity. You can ask the brand Alumilite any question you'd like, or you can ask Kate and Vance, the person, a question as we get close to wrapping the sucker up. And I don't know if you listened to the other ones. This is a regular occurrence. So it's mostly like I ask you to, I'm berating you this whole time, asking you about your life and your art and everything else. I don't think it's fair for no questions coming back this way. That's why I do it.
Okay, well, I'll give a question to you, Caton.
Okay.
You an artist? I'm interested. I know that you have an eye for it, but do you yourself art or make?
That's a great question. And the reality is I believe that I'm making stuff every day. My acts of making are a little bit different than the traditional sense. So I'm the content creation and marketing lead for Polytech, which is the parent company of Alumilite. And I get to help create by leading a team of people. And then when it comes to me personally, I write every day. I haven't had the chance of like making a lot of big things recently, but we are working on this little video where like I do a big Marcus Aurelius quote with those like Crink markers that have come in the tubes, and I like wrote it out really big on like a giant canvas, and we're gonna coat it with ACC plus. So like I'm excited for that, but that's not a regular occurrence for me when it comes to like doing something like that. But I mostly am doing it to show people kind of like my own ethos, but then also like, if I could do this, anybody can do this, and this is how simple it is to make in this medium. But the all that separates, like we talked about originally, is just the willingness to do it, and kind of getting over that self-doubt or getting over that fear that maybe this isn't going to be good enough. Or yeah, my life over the last 3 years has been a big experience of learning how to not give a rat's butt anymore about people's opinions, and just like pursuing the things that I really like. So that's a long answer, but to answer your question, yes, I do make. Would I call myself an artist? Whew, I think I'm trying to create a life that is artistic by the way that I live my life. I think that's the answer that I would give you.
You know, I think an artist probably would give like the same answer. So I'd say you're an artist.
All
Yeah.
right, cool. Sweet. Then we're in the same boat. I like it. High five to you via the interweb. Sweet. So, Kerry, I can't express how wonderful this has been. I know this is a little bit shorter, but you're gonna have to forgive me because I am on vacation for this podcast. But your answers are so dialed in. Your work is beautiful. I hope everyone that watches this podcast or hears a little clip of this or sees your work supports you. Yeah, man, you're awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Thanks, Caton.